to stay with them. Shall I start, or do you want to wait for an extra minute?
No, we can
You want to wait?
I think we can start, does it on?
Yes.
It's on the camera, but it might be online.
Yes.
It'll be online, I think. So. Go ahead.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everybody. Thank you. So at the beginning, I'm Ahmed Al-Awais from NADIC. I'm the Senior Director of Sustainability and ESG. And with me here is Ken, the founder of VRM, and Ruel, which is the Sustainability Director also in the VRM. I would like to start our session with our greening initiative. So we do have a greening initiative at NADIC, and in that initiative, at the beginning, we went to ask the people who are managing the initiative on what are the challenges that they faced when they were running this program. And they were facing three major problems: the water scarcity problem, and the soil health problem, and the slow growth of desert plantation problem. So we tried to manage these problems in the most sustainable way. And the first problem, which is the water scarcity problem, we know that we have plenty of water on site because basically we're a dairy farm. We consume a lot of water and we have a lot of wastewater. So we were thinking of treating that wastewater in the most sustainable, effective way to use it in our agricultural program. The second problem that we were facing is the soil health problem. So our soil needed to be live again. And we know that we have a lot of cows on the project, and these cows would produce cow manure. We look at cow manure as a byproduct, actually. And however, we know that we cannot endorse the cow manure directly to our agricultural program before sustainably treating it. So we also thinking of another sustainable approach to treat our cow manure. The third problem we are facing is our slow growth of our desert plantations. And also to solve that problem, we are thinking to face that problem in a most sustainable way, which is to treat our bio-waste in terms of food or tree products, and after treating it, to endorse them to our agricultural programs. And with us here are Mr. Ken, Mr. Will. Mr. Ken will illustrate on what's the sustainable approach to treat the water, treat the soil, and to fix the slow growth of our plantations.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. So we're here in Riyadh to discuss the subject of how to move from desert to some kind of usable land. Everybody talks about it. It's all over the news, and it's in every booth and every place here this afternoon. We want to present you something that's not bad news. I sat in a few of the sessions earlier, and every one of them had bad news. They had degraded soil. We have problems. We have things that are wasted. We have issues that everybody's concerned about. Not a lot of good news. Not a lot of solutions that can be deployed at scale, that can be deployed simply and can be deployed without cost. Well, this afternoon I want to give you some of those. Here you see a picture of what the soil is like. If you have a look at the bottom there, that's what actually the soil is like at the site at NADIC. What we have at the top is where we want to get to. How do we do that? On the left you see what everybody would describe as a compost. Actually, what's significant about it is that in that compost or in that recycled organics, there's a thing called humus. Humus is the difference between desert and soil. The picture you see there is a picture of a soil from the northwest of China, which has similar problems to what we face here in Saudi. It's alkaline. It doesn't have a lot of fertility. On the right, you see what can happen if you combine the activity of the humus with the soil. The sand you see there, that's sand from the site at Nardec's site at Harad. The soil on the right is soil that's created from desert sand in the period of one growing cycle. Here's the way that happens. Everybody knows that you've got a problem with water. Everybody knows that you've got a problem with recycling, with energy, with all those kinds of things. Sorry for this, but I have to give you a little chemistry lesson now. This is photosynthesis. This is the one you learned about in school. This is green plants. They need water to grow. They take in carbon dioxide, yes, but they consume water. They use energy, but they use only energy from the visible light region, which is a tiny piece in the middle of the light spectra. And in that process, which is fantastic, we rely on it, it's all of our life. But in that process, 12 bits of water go in and 6 bits of water come out. Growing plants consumes water. We all know that. That's why you have to irrigate, right? It's the reason you have to keep water up to the plants. They die otherwise. Here's a discovery that we made some time ago. There's another type of photosynthesis. There's another type. There's another group that are not plants, that operate completely separately, that use all the rest of the light spectra. Imagine they use your mobile phone. Imagine they use the energy from ultraviolet, from infrared light. Imagine that they operate in the dark because they use non-visible light. They operate 24 hours a day. But here, for your desert recovery program, here's the key point. They do their photosynthesis without consuming water. And when they do it, they have a little byproduct over here. So to the extent that that group of organisms is doing photosynthesis 24 hours a day on your site, they are manufacturing water you can use in your soil. We went to look for those guys. We went to find out how to make friends with them, how to grow them, how to incubate them in local soil, in everybody's soil. Don't have to bring them in, they're already there. Guess where we found them? In the soil, in a healthy soil. They live in the top layer of the soil. Most of life, 99% of all life, lives in the top 100 millimeters of soil. It doesn't live down here. It lives along here. And these guys contribute to the water cycle in a way that I'm sure you've not heard before. We've all heard of condensation and of dewfall. We've all heard of evapotranspiration. You lose water through the leaves of a plant. We've all heard of rain or irrigation making a cycle. We've all heard of evaporation from the soil when it gets hot. But have you heard of this? Have you heard of hydrosynthesis? Have you heard of the manufacture of water in your soil that you didn't add by rainfall and that didn't come as a part of evaporation? That comes by itself in the soil when those guys are happy. That piece is what we're focusing on today. We learnt to get in touch with this special process which is natural, which is in every soil, everywhere on the planet, but sometimes isn't operating too well. Sometimes it's actually almost stopped in the desert. Sometimes the rate of evaporation beats it. Sometimes you need to irrigate to get it started and you can't keep doing it. Guess where we found them? In the wastewater. Guess where else we found them? In the sludge at the bottom of the wastewater. The things that nobody wants. That's where the origins of the manufacture of water reside. It also lives inside every cow. Also lives inside every human. You have that set of organisms that manufactures water living in you now. So we found it in the waste. Here's where we found that. That's in the UAE. We did a little program there where we incubated that activity in a pile of sewage sludge. No, you notice that there's no machinery there, right? You notice it's not a processing factory. It's just making friends with a group of organisms and having a little party under a tent. We're pretty good at that in this part of the world, right? Have a little party under a tent is what we do every day. Now that tent in the UAE, which had human biosolids, camel waste and some crop residues, that pile did an amazing thing, because when those guys are making water in the pile, they also cool the pile. All through the summer, ambient temperature, 45 degrees up to 50 degrees. All the soil around up to 47 degrees. Close to that pile, the temperature was 29 degrees, optimum for plant growth, even though there were no plants. The soil was wet. Here's an example in Australia. We did a little practice at a couple of feedlots in Australia where we just collected the manure because those organisms live in the cows. So we collected their manure, put it under the same tarpaulins, and then after we'd met with the owner and asked him to just spread that out in the ground. This is a drought field. It had been 16 years without proper rainfall. It went 6 years with not a drop for 11 months out of the year, and during that time, the grass regrew. During that time. You can't grow grass without water, right? It didn't rain, but the grass grew. That tells you we made friends with the right guys. They made water in the soil. The grass was able to grow by itself. No planting, no special addition, just incubated cow manure converted to a humus-based material, spread on the soil, and there's the grass. That field now could hold 0 cattle when we started. Now it holds about 13,000 head of cattle on about 12,000 hectares of ground. That's quite a big increase in productivity. Here's the evidence of that. Green is good in this. Green is an example of photosynthesis happening. That cattle property went from, in the untreated areas, ground cover of somewhere around 14% to ground cover of somewhere around 97% with no treatment other than just adding that incubated bacterial photosynthesis onto the ground. Nothing else. Nothing special. Here we are in Egypt doing the same thing. You can see how technical it is. Looks really hard, right? There's a big machine there just piling things up. All we do is pile up the residue, let it incubate, and then spread it at scale. In this case, you can see how fertile that soil is. That's sand, just sand. That sand grew a crop of potatoes. All it is their incubated waste, fostering bacterial photosynthesis at scale, growing that into a center pivot. Very cheap, very simple. There's the potatoes that grew from it. Nothing else in there, just that. So what was said earlier, there's an example of being able to deal with the water, the waste, and the nutrient all at once and at scale. This is a rather shocked young technician who realized that the potatoes actually grow. Potatoes here in this region, one of the things we think is going to be very successful in this part of the world. Here we are in China practicing. You can see we have high-tech things that we do. All we're doing is spraying a catalyst to give a party to bacterial photosynthesis at massive scale. In that case, it's millions of tons of wasted material that might otherwise have been burnt, turned into a carbon residue, gone to the sky. Actually, what's happening is that we're just inviting a group that are natural to the ecosystem, that are already there, inviting them to a party, asking them to grow up in population while they're just sitting for 6 months having a little party under the tent. Nothing else special. There goes the tent. Everybody goes themselves and has their own party after that. We don't do anything else, just sits there. Incubates bacterial photosynthesis at scale. That one, by the way, was 3 kilometers long in a wadi. All dry area, everything similar to what's here, except that it's a lot colder. We learnt that it can operate in the cold as well as the heat by what we did there in China. Here we are on the eastern side of China, learning that you can also use the same process in salty soil. That soil is so salty that you can still see the salt crusted on top of the ground. But a full crop of rice grew with nothing else but that incubated bacterial photosynthesis. Here we are in Malaysia with the same thing. You can see how good the quality of soil is. It's exactly the same as what you'd experience here. That's the outcome in terms of production. And here we are in Jordan, just across the border. In this case, what we learnt was it's possible to quantify exactly how much water you add by doing this. Nothing else has happened here except a very special type of wheat was grown that's adapted already to the climate. It's a very old variety, very, very old, has a very high production capacity. We learnt that you could actually stimulate that wheat to grow into a perennial crop. Perennial crop of wheat, meaning you harvest it, you manage the soil, and it grows again from its roots, not from its seed. I'm telling you, you've not heard that before because I've never seen it before. Wheat doesn't do that. It grew to a perennial crop to cover 100% of the surface area of the ground and is still there now in the winter, coming through for a second crop of wheat in here in the desert. Where that is grown, has anybody seen the movie June? The June movies in the desert, you know, blowing sand? That's where that is. It's just sand on the ground. That wheat is still present now. It's been there all this year. It's still growing again for its second crop. We decided we would quantify that, which is here. The difference between soil that has had that bacterial photosynthesis stimulated and soil that hasn't, side by side, an additional 85,000 litres of water per hectare per day in the top half metre of soil. Now that's enough to grow the crop on its own. That's enough to buffer drought. That's enough to be the difference between desert and not desert. It's enough to grow soil. That much water. That much water wasn't applied. It didn't fall from the sky. It didn't come out of a well. It's additional. We're bringing that here with our partnership with NADEC. I can say that the courage and the approach to sustainability that's present here in this country is absolutely awesome. We've practiced all over the world. Now we're bringing that here to Saudi. This is a 3.5 kilometre long river that's being built to house wastewater only, to recycle wastewater, animal manure, and grow soil. When we grow soil, we'll be able to grow everything else. Wastewater, animal manure, and that makes soil. That's what's called now the circle. Watch this space. Come back in a year's time and ask us how many cows are growing in the field at that site in Harad in the desert. That's what we call reversing desertification at scale. You need friends, but they're very, very small, the friends you need. Thanks, everybody. I think we're supposed to have a question and answer session now, so anything you want to ask, please do. Good, that's it. No. Any questions? Sorry.
First of all, thank you for the informative session we have. I have a question. I didn't catch that. The main purpose for the tent, what was that exactly? For the tent. Why are you covering the
Perfect question. So the reason for the tent is if we leave it, the water will evaporate out of the pile. It'll be drier than what it is. If we cover it, the bacteria actually swim around inside the pile looking for nutrient and homogenize the material that's inside. And while they're doing that over a 6 months period, that converts all of that material into what you see in the bucket here. So it builds the humus in the pile, but you need circulation. Other people do that by a machine. You turn it with a machine, yeah? We don't use a machine. We keep the water in and let them swim.
We have our friends underneath.
Underneath. Yes.
Thank you so much.
It's good. Anything else? I knew.
Thank you very much. My name is Layth Al-Mughrabi from Field Fair Ecology from Jordan. My question is, could this approach be used for natural rehabilitation, or is it for natural rehabilitation, for natural habitats, for native, wild, if we can call them, plant species instead of crop production?
In fact, that's our target. In fact, we have a cooperation agreement with the government of Jordan specifically for that, to regenerate the native species of fodder, the edible grasses and edible shrubs to the east of Jordan, specifically doing this. It's really important to note that this is done with local residues, local soils and local plants, because that's the best way to keep it sustained. So yes, absolutely. Any other? Don't be shy. You get no homework afterwards. All good? Well, thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate. Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Thank you for the session. Could local farmers utilize this? How could local farmers utilize such a practice without, sometimes, local farmers don't have such a knowledge, So how can you translate such knowledge to local farmers?
Perfect question too. So our partnership with NADEC incorporates information transfer. So part of that is we would get them in and show them. You can see that it's not technical. What you saw on the screen was all local farmers actually recycling their own waste in their own place. So not transporting it and paying somebody to process and bringing it back, actually doing the conversion on their own property. So yes, it's designed to be that way. Sometimes they don't have quite enough. Sometimes it's a small farm. There's not enough residue to make a pile like that. In that case, we would encourage a group of people to get together and do it together. We have a number of places like that around the world where that's exactly the case.
Thank you very much.
I could illustrate more on that. We have a program that we'll announce later that it's with the Ministry of Education. So we would like to educate the young generation about humus soil and about the importance of recycling water and recycling all bioproducts on farm. And in that program, we'll be telling students, young generation, about how to do this stuff.
And the beauty of what we are putting forward here is the ability to decentralize. So during COVID, in quite a number of countries where people have already been in touch with this sort of technology, they were able to even bring the technology to grow stuff right outside their houses when they could not go out and buy food. So this happened in places like Singapore, in places like China, in places like Indonesia.
Thank you so much. Does too many of these bacteria could harm the plants? Too many of these bacteria could have any harm on the plants?
The section of the community that we're talking about is the archaea. So before there was us, before there was forests, before there was oceans, before there was water on this planet, we had a very hostile environment. Ammonia in the air, not much oxygen, a lot of hydrogen sulfide, can't breathe it. Those guys were there then. They've been here millions of years. They haven't destroyed the planet. They've actually kept us alive. So I don't think that they really pose a threat to us. I think that we should get to know them because they live longer than us.
Yeah, we harmed our own planet, not them. Yeah. Thank you.
Here's something just to take home. You remember I mentioned condensation up there? Imagine that this set of organisms has a cousin amongst their population who, when evaporation comes up from the soil, floats up with that little droplet that you can't even see, living in the droplet, spinning around inside it, swimming. That droplet, they give a special protein to the droplet, and that causes it to condense and capture other droplets, and that's a part of how rain happens. Did you know that rain happened by a biological reaction? That's why in all of the writings that you hear, you talk about a thing called the mist that rises from the earth. That when the earth is fertile, there's a mist that rises. When you see the mist, the droplet has condensed. The condensation that is, dewfall in the morning, that condensation is biologically created. Hugely important in this part of the world. Yep. There we go. All right, thank you very much, everybody. We love it that you're here. Any questions, please look on the websites, talk to NARDEC. They have a comprehensive program which is, at the moment, the biggest in Saudi Arabia, so have a look at it.
Please come to the front and take a look at the salt, yeah?